The House Executive welcomes the opportunity to run this Interreg EU funded project called HANDIHEAT. HANDIHEAT is a collaboration of 7 partners across 5 European countries. HANDIHEAT's aim is to improve the energy efficiency and renewable solutions in housing in rural communities. HANDIHEAT is divided into 4 work streams. Firstly, to look at the best practice across the countries and what works well. Secondly, to look at the policies in fuel poverty and health inequality across the partner countries. Thirdly, to develop pilot projects in both Finland and Fermanagh. And finally, to develop a toolkit for rural communities to look at energy efficiency and rural solutions in their own partner countries. Today you'll meet Catherine, who's our project manager, and Amy, her assistant. You'll also meet the householders that give us permission to retrofit their houses in Fermanagh. In Fermanagh, we took 6 house out of homes and improved the cavity wall insulation, the loft insulation. We provided passive standard windows and air tightness measures. We also used 2 low-carbon electric heating models. Firstly, a hybrid heat pump working with the existing oil boiler. Here we give primacy to the heat pump, and then we use the oil boiler during the colder weather. Secondly, we looked at electric generation and storage. Here we installed a solar photovoltaic panels on the roof and an electric storage battery with electric heating. The 3 main outputs of the pilot is to improve the thermal comfort for the householders, to reduce the energy bills, but most importantly to reduce the carbon footprint of the householders. We intend to get the kit and equipment fitted by spring of last year, but because of COVID we only got it fitted in December of last year. Initial feedback from the householders has been positive, all recording improved thermal comfort. Within the electric storage model we've seen reduced energy costs, and in the hybrid heat pump model we've seen the cost of the heat pump being offset by savings from the heating oil. But most importantly we've seen reduced carbon footprint across all the properties. I would like to thank the associate partners who took part in this project, namely Ulster University and the Electric Storage Company, and Grant Boilers, Climate and New Generate. All have collaborated to provide our data monitoring and the equipment for this project in Fermanagh. But most importantly and finally, I'd like to thank the householders who provide us and give us permission to go into the properties, as it's been a very difficult year, and provide us with great feedback in the design and the delivery and now in the valuation of the project. In this project, householders are centred to all the decision making, as in with the project ethos. Make the technology work for the tenant, not the tenant work for the technology.
I'm delighted to be part of this Interreg project, specifically looking at the impact of rural fuel poverty in dispersed rural communities. Many years ago we were aware of the issues of rural fuel poverty, and most particularly the impact on rural people's health. We know cold, damp homes create poor health, and many years ago we decided that we proactively would work with partners to try and address the issues and find innovative solutions. Initially we were looking at the impact of rural fuel poverty in terms of health and the people. As it progressed, we began to recognise that we also had to look at the impact on the planet and the carbon footprint associated with fossil fuels in rural areas. There was a lack of innovative solutions present at that time, and by working in partnership with the main owner of the social housing in the area, which is the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, that was the way that we could come together to address the issue and find solutions that suited the people and the policies as we move forward.
It was all explained very well to me when it was installed, and I also was left the manuals for everything, so I can consult the manual or give a ring and ask any questions I need to do. It's all been quite straightforward.
Hi, my name's Mark Kiernan. I live in 54 Trasnaway and I'm a member of the HANDIHEAT home heating scheme. It's been amazing from start to finish. It's been a pleasure to be a part of. The technology has been very easy to use. It's very easy to understand. The little gadgets that you have there, it's so amazing. An idiot could run it. If I can do it, anyone can do it. I think everybody should be getting them. The government should be backing this 100%. Housing executives, because this is going to save money for everybody. Climate change is important for all of us, and this is my little way of planting a tree, saving the environment one man at a time. But we all have to do it.
Opportunities to address rural challenges are often missed because of resources, because of funding and lack of expertise in rural areas, and often these are diverted to areas of higher population density. The MPA programme has given the HANDIHEAT partnership an opportunity to look at rural communities which have experience of similar challenges. Regional solutions which have been proven to work across the NPA projects have been shared and adapted to local regulations and best practice in Northern Ireland. 6 social houses in Lisnaskea were selected as a second pilot site in the HANDIHEAT project, in tandem with testing of pilots taking place in Varsila in northern Finland, managed by our partners at Karelia University of Applied Sciences. As the first lead partner in an NPA project, the Housing Executive has been given this opportunity to collaborate with European partners, Housing Executive colleagues, tenants, experts, suppliers and contractors in delivering the outputs of this work package within the HANDIHEAT project.
This has been a fantastic opportunity working with Robert and Catherine and working with our other European partners. This has demonstrated real transnational cooperation within the NPA region. And I must say, as a climate change activist, this has been a fantastic opportunity and hopefully will make a real impact going forward.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the HANDIHEAT Final Conference. My name is Peter Roberts. I have the pleasure to chair the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this final conference of the HANDIHEAT programme. This is a programme that demonstrates, firstly, the serious and imminent nature of the energy and carbon challenge. Secondly, the importance of linking action research with clear thinking and a positive commitment to action and implementation. And thirdly, the great value of working together and sharing experience transnationally in order to achieve a mutually agreed future state. The problem that the programme has tackled is a common one. Rural living brings many, many rewards in terms of the quality of the environment in which people live. But it also carries real costs, environmental and economic. And this is especially the case with regard to domestic energy supply and use. Put simply, rural communities often have poor or no access to many of the sources of energy that are available in urban areas. Even in the current petrochemical-dominated arena, gas supply is a rarity, and this leaves rural dwellers with very few options, many of which are expensive, which leads to fuel poverty, and most of which are environmentally damaging. If you add to this rural challenge the additional dimension of climate change and energy switching, plus the urgent requirement to upgrade the thermal efficiency of rural homes, then what you have is a perfect storm. And if anybody doubts the importance of dealing with climate change, then I would recommend strongly that you go and read the latest report from the International Panel on Climate Change. And if you just simply want to read one paragraph, and this paragraph is more chilling than almost anything I've ever read in my life, and it makes the point very simply. Go and read the introduction to Section A, where it says that it is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean and land. Widespread and rapid changes in the atmosphere, ocean, cryosphere and biosphere have occurred, and they will continue to occur unless we take action. And as was put by the people in the video, even the most inexperienced, non-professional person can now understand the importance of taking action. The climate emergency provides the backdrop for HANDIHEAT, and it demonstrates the urgent need to find both interim and long-term solutions to the challenge of providing more efficient and environmentally sound sources of energy. This project has made major steps in the right direction, and it's helped to change and to develop new approaches to the use of technologies, existing technologies that can be used in different arrays to ensure that rural homes can be assured of a more sustainable future. Working with our partners, the Pure Energy Centre, Shetland, Austurbrù, Iceland, ARC Healthy Living Centre, Northern Ireland, Clár Irish Centre for Housing, Ireland, the Luonnonvarakeskus Natural Resources Centre, Finland, and the Karelia University of Applied Sciences, Finland, the project has made substantial progress. This EU-funded project has set out what can be achieved and has demonstrated the benefit of working together on what is the greatest problem of our age. And it is the greatest problem of our age. COVID is a serious issue and needs to be dealt with, but climate change is a step up in terms of having to operate nationally and internationally. The forthcoming COP26 event in Glasgow will deal with many issues that are at the heart of climate change. And this is essential for further progress. But equally important is the demonstration effect of projects like HANDIHEAT, which develop and apply practical and effective solutions at a local level. We need to think and act from global to local, and HANDIHEAT is a perfect demonstration of that principle being put into practice. Thank you all for your inputs to the project. They are major contributions to securing our collective future. By working together, we can begin to reduce the approximately 30% of carbon emissions that are associated with housing and other buildings. The work done already under the HANDIHEAT initiative has put us on the right track and provides a platform for future innovation and collaboration. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to read this project, and it's helped us and our partners to make real progress. Building on this success, the new HEATER, Heat and Energy Education and Empowerment for Rural Areas, will launch in the near future, and this will spread the learning from HANDIHEAT across Europe. Thank you all once again for your participation, your energy, your imagination, and your commitment to improvement. Can I now introduce my colleague Grania Long, the Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, to say a few words. Over to you, Grania.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning. And I think you can see the level of commitment to the issue of sustainable development within the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, because it's very rare that they allow the Chair and the Chief Executive to get out and about together for an event. So I think that shows the level of work and a resource that we intend and will continue to place on the issue of sustainable development, addressing climate change and critically energy efficiency. I'm really thrilled to be here this morning, and I'm delighted looking at the agenda that's ahead over the course of the day, of the amount of focus now that you will make over the course of this morning and further on into the afternoon, looking at the issue of energy efficiency, particularly in rural areas. And it's a critical issue. This conference is timely as well as important, given, as Peter says, the work that's ongoing in the run-up to COP26, but also as we see the global effects and also the local effects of changes to energy prices, and how our households, our tenants, and indeed you and I will be thinking about how that impacts on our lives. The Northern Ireland Housing Executive is the strategic housing authority for Northern Ireland, so we give effect to government policy through our strategies and our delivery. But we're also a very large landlord of 85,000 homes. And that combination of housing strategy at a regional level, but across into local delivery, makes our organisation unique, but it also places huge responsibility and obligations on us as a landlord and as the authority. And I'm personally very conscious of the fact that with 85,000 homes, more than 40,000 children go to bed in housing executive homes every evening, and it's our obligation to keep them safe, warm and dry. And the wider community, their wider families and households. I'm thrilled that Professor Sir Michael Marmot will be speaking after me, and no one is better placed than he to address you and talk to you about health inequalities. And I think the role and the work that you are doing and the focus of this event and this conference and of HANDIHEAT more generally will really strongly enable a reduction in health inequalities and do that at the most local level. And I was thrilled to see in the video just before Peter spoke, just that how intrinsic that is to the tenants and the people and the households that are affected. You could hear from their conversations and from what they've already told us the effect that what is new technology integrated into their homes will have on their wider lives, on their health, on their well-being and on their children. as a result of all of that, and Peter has set out in the starkest of terms, given the IPCC report, the scale and the nature of the challenge ahead. And we're very conscious, as I said, of our responsibilities as an authority and as a landlord. So we have developed a sustainable development strategy for the organisation. But what does that actually mean? Well, what it means is we are now transforming our organisation, the work that we do. In fact, absolutely every aspect of the organisation is now strongly focused on the sustainable development goals, meeting our obligations under those goals, so that every part of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, whether it's the homes that we build in partnership with housing associations, whether it's the management and the maintenance of our existing homes, right through to how all of the 3,200 staff in the organisation get around Northern Ireland in vans, in cars, and much more likely over the years using public transport as well, that we do that in the most sustainable way. And that means a critical change in how we plan, in how we resource, and how we do housing. So that's why HandiHeat and our investment in HandiHeat and the work that we're doing, coordinating and working with partners in HandiHeat is so important, and it has sight across the board as well as at executive level. I just wanted to make some observations today. In a previous role, I spent a lot of my time focused on resilience and resilience challenges, and I think it's really important that we recognise that the work that HandiHeat, the programme itself and the outcomes of those programmes, are building resilience within the households that we work with. Because fundamentally, and I have a personal passion about resilience, and I think what I've seen is over time households that are overly dependent on imported fossil fuels and the effect that has on health and well-being, as well as on financial inclusion and fuel poverty. So what HandiHeat is doing is integrating a number of solutions to that problem of energy, of fuel poverty. And I have to say congratulations to those that have designed the programme, because it does tick a number of boxes in relation to building resilience of households. I'm also really impressed by the focus on partnership and collaboration. As Peter says, HandiHeat has 7 partners working across 5 countries, and that collaboration and that knowledge exchange is really having an effect locally here in Northern Ireland, where we can learn from Finland, from Iceland, from Scotland, and from our colleagues in the Republic. That collaboration, that knowledge, bringing together technical professionals working in this space and looking across energy systems and buildings, and including a focus on other areas, really gives us an opportunity to get ahead and to build on the work that we're doing in HandiHeat. And as Peter had said, that next programme, Heater, gives us an opportunity now to scale up. And we know we have to take risks as an organisation. We have to put our resources where those challenges are. So we have to put our money where our mouth is. And so in undertaking those demonstration projects, as you heard from my colleague Robert Clemens at the start, focusing on Lisnaskea and Fermanagh and giving us an opportunity to look at what works best in those particular types of homes. HandiHeat now really gives us, that programme really gives us an opportunity to learn lessons from practice. But I think most importantly, it is informing our energy transition as an organisation. The lessons that we learn go right into strategy and enable us to think about how can we now scale that up. Heater will give us the opportunity to do that, and we'll announce further details in relation to that in October. I wanted to finish just by one of the most important aspects of this programme, and that's the people in those homes that are most affected and that most benefit from the work. I think what I have been most impressed by is the level of choice and the level of empowerment that HandiHeat now gives our tenants, our residents. And you heard in the video, each of those tenants deeply involved and critically involved in the design and the delivery of the programme. And I think that's really important. We all know that public education and changing behaviour is a critical aspect, a critical part of how we build our resilience to climate change, but also how we mitigate the worst effects. So finally, I think COVID has absolutely convinced us and reminded us of the importance of a secure home in protecting us, in keeping us safe, warm and dry, but also in making sure that we thrive. And the relationship between housing and health which is really, really obvious through the HandiHeat programme, has never been more important. And the role that energy plays in this complex relationship is really critically clear. And as I say, the lessons we learn from this programme will inform that sustainable development work that we do as a landlord today and well into the future. I'd like to say congratulations to all of our partners for the incredible work you're doing. It is having a real and lasting effect on how we as a region in Northern Ireland think about our homes, how we design, how we deliver those homes, and how we make the best use of technology to be as energy efficient and as resilient to climate change as we can be. So huge congratulations to everyone involved, to all of the partners, and continued success as we go forward. I'm absolutely thrilled now to hand over to Sir Michael Marmot, who has made himself available to contribute to this conference. I think there's nobody better placed to talk about the effects of health inequality and how we as a society and as public bodies like ours need to take our responsibilities seriously. So I'm delighted to hand over to him now. Have a good morning.
The Institute of Health Equity at UCL has been leading the charge on what we can do to address health equity. A moment of explanation. In Britain, we're used to thinking about health inequalities. We've been using the language of health equity. Those systematic inequalities in health between social groups that are judged to be avoidable and are not avoided are unfair, hence inequitable. COVID-19 came along and revealed and amplified the inequalities in health that we've been examining. There are two huge issues that face individual countries and indeed the planet. One is inequality, and two is the climate crisis. We've been focusing more on the inequality dimension, less on the climate crisis, but we recognize the need to put them together, to tackle them at the same time. Let me say a word first then about inequalities. And I have to go back in time a little bit. I chaired the WHO Commission on Social Determinants of Health. And in the wake of that, the British government invited me to conduct a review to answer the question, how could the findings and recommendations of a global commission apply to one country, England? And we produced the Marmot Review in 2010, Fair Society, Healthy Lives. In February 2020, we published the Marmot Review 10 years on. We looked back, what had happened in the last 10 years? And the answer was not good. In England, an improvement in life expectancy that had gone on for more or less 100 years, 1 year every 4 years, life expectancy was improving. In 2010, that rate of improvement slowed dramatically and just about ground to a halt. Second, inequalities in health increased. Health follows the social gradient. The more deprived the area, the shorter the life expectancy. And that gradient got steeper over the 10 years. The inequalities got bigger. And thirdly, health for the poorest people got worse outside London. In addition to the deprivation relation with life expectancy, we see regional differences. And in fact, it's worse to be deprived in the northeast and northwest of England than it is in the southeast. And in every region outside London, life expectancy for the poorest 10% went down. So that's where we were before the pandemic. Health had stopped improving, inequalities were increasing, and health for the poorest people was getting worse. The big question is why? What happened in 2010? There was a new government elected, a Conservative-led coalition government, that had as its central purpose, and it was quite open about this, rolling back of the state austerity, reduction in public expenditure. And they did it. The proportion of gross domestic product that went in public expenditure went down from 42% in 2010 to 35%. 42 became 35% in 2019. And it was done in a regressive way. The more deprived the area, the steeper the reduction in public spending by local authorities. There was increases in child poverty, reduction in welfare payments, reduction in investment in preschool, reduction in education spend per person. In all kinds of ways, the public sector got dramatically worse. And the question is, can you get away with that kind of reduction in public spending with no ill benefits? Well, I guess you could if all the money were wasted, but it looks like the money was not being wasted. As I said, health stopped improving, inequalities got bigger, health of the poorest people got worse. And then came the pandemic. And the inequalities were amplified. To give you just one measure, we produced a report for Greater Manchester. Life expectancy in 2020 in the Northwest region went down by 1.6 years for men, 1.2 years was the average in England, 1.2 years for women, 0.9 was the average in England. The COVID-19 mortality in the Northwest was 25% higher than the English average. The pandemic made inequalities worse. And we produced 3 reports, which we called Build Back Fairer. The COVID-19 Marmot Review, published in December 2020, Build Back Fairer. We then published the report of the Commission on Social Determinants of Health in the Eastern Mediterranean region of WHO, and we called that Build Back Fairer. And then our work with Greater Manchester culminated in Build Back Fairer in Greater Manchester. Building back fairer is vital, but it has to be in the context of action on climate change. We were asked by the government's Committee on Carbon and Climate Change how net zero greenhouse gas emissions could be achieved while at the same time taking action to improve health and reduce health inequalities. And we had a stark warning that if you don't take account of health inequalities, actions to reduce the climate crisis, to attack climate crisis, could make inequalities worse. Take the example of a consumption tax. Consumption taxes almost always are regressive. The poorer you are, the higher the proportion of your income you pay in taxation. So a consumption tax, a green tax, which is very valuable from the point of view of trying to reduce carbon emissions, actually makes inequalities worse. It's vitally important to take inequalities into account when designing the measures to combat climate change. And it's quite possible. For example, if you say, all right, congestion charging, it's okay for people to drive their cars around cities, provided they just pay a lot of money to do it. That means rich people can drive their cars into cities, poor people can't. On the other hand, if you advocated sustainable transport, walking, cycling, public transport, that has a huge equity dimension, as well as being better for the planet. Fuel poverty. Why should fuel poverty exist? Well, it exists because of poverty. it exists because of poor housing quality, which makes it necessary for poorer people to consume more fuel to heat their houses, or not heat their houses because the alternative was going hungry and therefore living in cold, which is of course bad for health. So taking the right actions to combat the climate crisis will, it turns out, be the right actions to address inequalities. We need to put these two agendas together. What we're talking about is creating socially sustainable societies that have social justice and climate justice at the heart of all their action.
Good morning. My name is Robert Clemens, Project Lead for HANDIHEAT. Welcome to Session 1. If you've any questions today, please use the question and answer box that we aim to reply within the next session. Thank you. The first session today covers the research phase of the project and the demonstration pilots that we have in both Finland and Fermanagh. We will hear from Christoph from Austurbrù in Iceland on work package T1.1 on what works well and the current best practice across the 9 Northern Periphery and Arctic partner regions. We will hear from Una from ARC Healthy Living Centre in Fermanagh from work package T4.1 and will provide an update on the health inequalities in housing. Within the demonstration pilots, firstly, we will hear from Vilja from Karelia University in Finland, with work package T2.2, which will look at the biogas which was used to heat rural communities across Finland. Then the Houses Edit will look at work package T1.2 and the electrification of heating of rural communities across Northern Ireland off the gas grid. Now I'll hand you over to Christoph for work package 1, resource identification. Thank you.
Utilization. Yeah, thanks, Robert, and welcome everyone to my talk entitled Evidencing Excellence, Best Practice and Opportunities for Better Energy Utilization. My name is Christoph Meersbrock, and I work at the East Iceland Regional Development Agency, Austurbrù. And basically what this talk does is introduce you briefly to the work done as part of work package 1 in the HANDIHEAT project. And the agenda for my talk is basically built up like this. I will firstly introduce you to some of the research problems addressed in this work package and the ideas that we followed through. Then I will present you with some examples from the MPA regions where there are actually existing outstanding energy initiatives to be from which we can learn. Then I will be briefly sharing with you our gap analysis. And then we go on to talk a bit about the fuel mix report across different parts of the NPA regions. And then I'll go on to talk a bit about opportunities for improving domestic heating in remote regions in the future. And then I will share with you some of our conclusions. And on the right-hand side here in this slide, you see actually how remote living in the NPA region can be. And this is a cottage from East Iceland. Usually there's more, we have also neighbors, but this is just to give you an idea how it looks. And so let me start by presenting you with a research problem addressed in this work package 1. And basically, we find that present day energy legislation often is focused very much on addressing and accommodating the needs of population centers, also in the NPA regions. And it is frequently the case that rural and sparsely populated areas are being left behind in this initiative towards more sustainable housing and so forth. And fuel inequity basically remains a challenge, especially in rural areas, but of course not exclusive to rural areas. So our idea basically was to look into how people living in the rural areas have addressed or can address some of these challenges in the future. And so what the questions that followed through our inquiry was basically identifying some successful energy initiatives that already exist in the MPA areas, and then figuring out what made these initiatives so successful and what were the drivers behind these initiatives. And then also have a look into the realities of today and how the fuel mix is.
Christoph,
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you share your screen so we can see your slides?
Oh, you don't see them.
No,
Okay, that's a bit that's a pity.
no, that's okay. We have a backup here, but just to remind you, just to share your screen.
Yeah, because I did that in Zoom, so there seems to be. So nobody can see my slides. That's a bit a shame.
Oh, you're sharing now. Brilliant. If you can just go into.
How about now? Now it works.
No, it works. If you go to presentation mode, Christoph. Thank you.
Is this okay?
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, let me show you the remote house again that I just mentioned in my talk, so that you that you have an idea what I talked about then. And yeah, basically, we were here. I was trying to basically present to you with the main ideas of our work package and the research questions we followed through. So basically, we looked into the present state fuel mix in the MPA regions and compared them a bit. And then we tried to identify opportunities that exist for improving the present state. So this evidencing excellence, the first part, where we identified successful initiatives that followed basically a multiple case study approach and method. And we deemed that appropriate because a multiple case study helps one identifying basically practice-based problems where experience of the actors are important and the context of the action is critical. And we adopted a so-called snowball or chain approach to case identification, where we asked people who know what cases are information rich and that are good examples for study. So we also sampled for deviant or extreme cases, in a sense that is basically looking for outstanding innovative energy practices in the NPA regions. And our data came from semi-structured interviews and questionnaires and documents. So this is an overview of the cases we identified. And you can see we looked into 3 initiatives from Iceland, and then 2 from Finland, 3 from the Shetland, and 4 from Ireland, and 2 from Northern Ireland. And basically, we named these case studies vignettes and counted them through from 1 to 14. And just to give you an idea or example of the things that we found. So let's start. I'm not going to talk through every single initiative, but maybe the most poignant ones. And if you look, for instance, in vignette 01, where it's about geothermal central heating, that is basically in Iceland, not only Reykjavik, but also many of the rural areas have over the years replaced coal stoves and diesel generators at a large scale by using or making accessible high temperature geothermal fields for domestic heating. And here basically the main driver behind these initiatives, which happened in several stages, were simply it was basically difficult for Icelanders at the time to import coal and fossil fuel, because of the both the First World War and Second World War, and then people in Iceland, basically forced by these necessities, had to become innovative, and they basically figured out how to heat their homes with by making use of high temperature geothermal fields. And a side effect of that was rather unexpected. At the time, nobody sort of thought about that deliberately. It was that Icelanders all of a sudden had less cases of respiratory illnesses. So, which goes back to the health effect of some of these initiatives. So that was, I think, a good example, and as it also solved issues in rural areas. And here, I think it's very interesting to mention that the grassroots innovators for these types of technologies were farmers who took the first step, and that was largely happening in absence of government programs and so forth, which was quite an interesting finding. So let's give you another example, let's say for a different region. Here's one from Northern Ireland. Here we have vignette 5, anaerobic digestion. And basically, in this case that we looked into, basically this or biodegradable waste was used to power and provide heat for close to 14,000 homes. And this was an initiative that differed in its drivers somewhat, because it was fueled by more recent considerations about climate change, and also supported by grant schemes. So there was some governmental support behind these initiatives, for instance. And so you see they're very different and diverse in nature, these vignettes that we found, but all in themselves interesting examples of how people actually, as of today, embrace sustainable energy practices in the MPA regions. And yes, here's another one that I found particularly interesting. That was the tidal turbines in the Shetland Islands. And here we have basically some experimental wave and tidal power plants that powers 30 homes as of today, and a port and a freezing facility. And this is quite interesting, as this tidal turbines appear to have the advantage over wind power, and in the sense that it can provide more stable power over time. And yes, so this is just to give you an idea of the nature of the things that we found here. And then we try to get our head around what were the drivers behind these different initiatives, and what made them similar or different. And to figure that out, we applied Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory as a framework. And this basically helps explain the process by which an innovation is communicated through certain channels over time among the members of a social system. And you can read more of this sort of theoretical underpinning in our report. It's more there. And what we found basically is that initiatives in rural areas are often or the innovators are often people that you wouldn't like naturally expect to be there. And this was the case of a lot of farmers just being bold and taking initiative, and maybe faced by realities of energy prices or practical considerations, and they took the lead in many cases in the rural areas. And then we also see maybe more recently the emergence of subsidies and basically government schemes trying to support people interested in technology or early adopters, an early majority of people in their efforts to innovate and implement sustainable projects in the across the MPA region. So then a part of our job was also to look into the domestic space heating by energy source across the MPA region. And you can see just by looking at the color without reading the fine print that the regions differ very much in ways that they heat their homes. And maybe the most or extreme example is here if you do a side-by-side comparison of Iceland to Greenland. And you can see that, like I mentioned before, the Icelanders have replaced or heat their homes nowadays a lot through geothermal energy. And and you can see that fossil fuel and oil has almost entirely disappeared from the Icelandic domestic heating mix. And in Greenland, on the other hand, faced with much of the many similar challenges as Iceland, but of course the settlements in Greenland are very remote, and there's no centralized energy net. And so people in Greenland still heat their homes to a large extent by using fossil. And so here are opportunities if you think like that. And other larger populated areas are maybe more similar. You can see the Norwegians have used to a large extent electrical heaters that are powered by hydro electrical power plants and so forth. And yes, so that was maybe just to give you an idea. And then we ended up producing a list of opportunities, if you will, where we found some cases. This list is not meant to be all inclusive, but it gives you an idea that there exist opportunities in the MPA regions where we can do things better and where we can maybe take further projects to improve our domestic heating. And for instance, again, a case from Iceland, this 01 vignette here, we have, as you might know, primary aluminium smelting or smelters in Iceland, who basically use a lot of energy when smelting throughout the smelt process, and that also means there's a large amount of waste energy. And one could, for instance, use the opportunity to heat a village or two next to this, often also remote located large industry facilities. And so they're like very practical opportunities that we try to find and point to for the future. And the conclusions that we have from our work here is that there are many examples of innovative energy practices across the NPA region today. And we can learn many things from people having already taken these steps. And there are a multitude of different drivers for undertaking such initiatives. This can be climate change concerns. It can, but also be more practical that coal just might not be available in the quantities that you would like to have it, or so forth. So people get very innovative when one has to, and then and we also find that we have a multitude of regional problems that have been solved So we have seen reductions in energy consumption and emissions, and we have seen and have cases across the NPA region where we see positive health outcomes for people by such initiatives. So and then yeah, what an interesting finding was again is that it's often we can credit our creative, innovative individuals and people in the MPA regions that take the initiatives and take steps in this direction. But we would still argue that we need more government policies that sort of are more addressing the particular needs of rural areas. So the fuel mix for domestic heating in the region differs significantly across the regions, and that depends a bit on the resource availability. And in any case, there appears to be a lot of opportunities for learning more from each other, and that would be in follow up maybe in future projects. And yes, so there also still exist many opportunities to harvest underutilized energy resources in the MPA region. And those range from making use of industrial waste to improving transmission grids, to the installation of hydro and tidal power plants and so forth. So thank you very much for your attention, and please let me know if you have questions to our work package. And I hope I can answer them in a good way.
Thank you, Christoph from Austurbrù. And I now want to welcome Una, who's the HANDIHEAT Policy Research Officer for ARC Healthy Living, who will look at health inequalities and housing. Una, thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Una Porteous, and I am the Policy Research Officer for the HANDIHEAT Project. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to address this final event of the project. I will start by contextualising our involvement before laying out the details of the work that we have undertaken. Okay. The area of general health inequalities has long been a focus for the work undertaken in the ARC. We are a social enterprise based in the northeast of County Fermanagh in the west of Northern Ireland. The county has a population of around 62,000, and the ARC is situated in the second largest town in the county, Irvinstown. When it was established, the town had some of the highest rates of deprivation in Northern Ireland. Whilst there have been significant improvements in some of these measures, worryingly some remain more difficult to address and improve. Our work has been guided by the Marmot principles, those principles which are around ensuring fairness and inclusion for all across employment, standards of living, and access to health for children and adults. We have always offered a range of programmes based around community needs, Sure Start, addiction services and health improvements, often acting as a link between statutory services and those most at risk of exclusion. We are very keen to link practice with policy. So how did we become involved in HANDIHEAT? The issue of fuel poverty chimed with the essence of what the ARC is about. We have always sought to take practical steps to improve the lives of those around us. We aim to address the causes, and whilst we recognise that policy change is quite aspirational, we have coupled this with practical actions. When I first looked at the task of influencing policy in the context of fuel poverty, it struck me that it was a rather large piece of work. But to quote Desmond Tutu, the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. The risks of working towards policy change are the many-faceted vagaries that impact on research making its way to the right sets of eyes and ears. Not only does it need to get to the right people, but it also needs to meet with a fair wind in terms of how it sits alongside the key focus of any administration where change is required. Success should ensure research uptake. Our review of fuel poverty has been a key pillar of the HANDIHEAT project. Our two main reports, one on fuel poverty and the other on reviewing policy and practice in rural energy poverty. The latter report was delivered by the National Energy Action, and we thank them for that. The reports employed a range of research approaches, including desktop review, a European-wide call for evidence, in-depth interviews with key stakeholders, and a synthesis and gap analysis. So what did we find out? There is limited evidence of official definitions outside of the UK and Ireland in the broader European family. Only 2 of the 9 countries in the NPA region have an official definition. The original Boardman definition from the early 1990s, a household is in fuel poverty if they have to spend more than 10% of household income on energy costs, has been both refined and sometimes diverged from across the 4 nations of the UK. In all the jurisdictions of the UK, 21 degrees Celsius is deemed appropriate for living areas and 18 degrees for bedrooms. Those unable to maintain this level of warmth are considered to be in fuel poverty. Whilst each of the 4 nations have slight variations in their definitions, Scotland is the only nation which explicitly recognises the issue of rural fuel poverty and include an additional weighting for income in rural regions. They also make adjustments by deducting housing costs, childcare and benefits related to disability and care when defining fuel poverty. This is something that we think is of key importance and worthy of consideration across all of the UK. The report does look at the thinking in the Netherlands, where the nexus of underconsumption of energy, the failure to access energy savings and sustainable technologies, and the link between debt, ill health and financial vulnerability suggest the need to have a more multidimensional approach to the issue of energy poverty. The report concludes that there is a need to look not only at quantitative measures, but also qualitative ones in order to better understand the complexity of the problem. In a wider EU context, the Energy Poverty Observatory have endeavoured to find a suitable way to measure energy poverty. They suggest a balanced approach between consensual and expenditure-based indicators, which should give rise to an indicator of what they describe as energy poverty issues. The majority of respondents felt that a definition can become a static measurement and often not reflective of the lived experience for many, and strangely not often used in practice. Supports are often provided on the basis of other indicative and more easily defined risk factors, such as health, affordability, and other indicators of vulnerability. So what are the indicators of fuel poverty? Energy efficiency. Experts are generally agreed that a fabric-first approach is key. Our homes need to operate efficiently. Walls, roofs, windows, appliances all need to work in an efficient manner. The challenges here are manifold. Distribution of fuel and population. There are reduced opportunities for economies of scale when we have dispersed populations. District heating relies on a degree of proximity that sometimes cannot be achieved in rural settings. Distribution costs for fossil fuels add a layer of expense that impacts more on those at risk of fuel poverty. Children living in fuel poverty are often those most impacted, and it is well recognised that these children are more than twice as likely to suffer from a range of respiratory problems as those living in warm homes. Coupled with the negative impact on mental health, it is clear that this problem can weigh heavily on young people. Non-gas homes. Rural homes are often not linked to the gas networks, leading to a reliance on non-regulated fuel sources. This not only means that prices are subject to fluctuation, but often also that payment needs to be made up front. Finally, access to low-carbon technology is often a step too far for those facing fuel poverty, exacerbating the problem not only of reliance on fluctuating fuel prices, but also environmental issues. The latest report from the UN IPCC makes for a stark reality check. Whilst the clock is ticking, the report claims that there is still time for changes to have a positive impact. Retrofitting costs are high, and even with grant aid, there is an upfront cost that will be beyond the means of many, and most often those who already struggle financially. Policy makers need to recognise that a failure to support these changes will ensure failure in the long run. We see almost daily the impact of climate change on our environment, and the pressures mount to make changes to how we tackle the underlying problems. Our reports look at the potential of low carbon technologies to address not only the cost of making these changes, but the related health benefits resulting from doing so. Clearly, the challenge is in addressing the upfront costs of making this shift in our choices and behaviours. Patterns of living which have become deeply ingrained and choices that are most often made on the basis of low cost can work against new technologies. Resistance to change is almost our default position, with early adopters being the exception rather than the rule. In order to effect positive change, policy makers need to make the choice to change easier for many and more affordable for most. The move to a more socially just transition would be significantly enhanced. The inextricable links between fossil fuels and health impacts are undeniable, and any shift in practices should bring benefits to all, especially those who are most vulnerable. The health conditions related to living in a cold, damp home are well documented, so it is not a leap to conclude that the cost of treating these diseases places an additional burden on our health services. The report of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Longevity published a report in 2021, albeit in relation to COVID recovery, but stating that preventing ill health needs to be as important as treating it, and also referencing the need for a health plan, including achieving net zero and ensuring warmer homes. We are encouraged to seize teachable moments, and perhaps this is where COVID-19 recovery and our mission to look at fuel poverty and take action are most in tune with one another. The opportunity costs associated with inaction are staggering. For every pound spent on home improvements to keep people warm, the NHS saves £70 over 10 years. From a different perspective, it is estimated that for every pound spent on energy efficiency measures, there is a threefold increase in gross domestic product. Our partner regions in HANDIHEAT can teach us much about how many of these problems have been avoided. Build quality of the housing appears to mitigate much of the problem. There is the opportunity for review of building regulations to take account of, amongst other things, heat loss and solar gain, with many of the regulations lagging behind the expertise that is now available to us. Full implementation of the Future Home Standard should improve this picture. In new build, regulations remain the strongest lever available for meeting carbon targets, whereas for retrofit, grants and incentives are key trigger points. Think here of resaleability and planning permission for renovations as possible points of intervention. The welfare system seems to protect our neighbouring nations in a way that ours sometimes does not, and a higher standard of living seems to protect homeowners from the worst of the problems. And finally, fuel prices are more in line with income, perhaps because of the nature of those fuel sources, often from abundantly available resources, wind and biomass being examples, leading to less exposure to the vagaries of world markets. Let us have a look at the findings as they apply to the linkages between low carbon technologies and energy poverty. The report considers a range of low carbon technologies and how they might address energy poverty. Heat pumps. These have been very successfully deployed in our Nordic partner regions, but are not without issues in the UK. Often cited as an expensive option, there are issues also around understanding of how they need to be deployed appropriately. Back to the issue of fabric first, and appropriate sizing for the properties in which they are installed. Our report mentions that they might be more appropriate for new build than for retrofitting. There are also issues around cultural norms and expectations from these systems. Solar PV and solar thermal. There is clear potential that this technology to reduce, there's clear potential with this technology to reduce electricity costs and indeed for some small earnings to be available should the technology produce more electricity than is required by the household. Coupling this technology with battery storage can increase the benefits. This technology also has high upfront costs. Location and aspect of homes can be a challenge to their efficacy. These matters present a significant challenge to making a difference for those in energy poverty. District heating is in common usage in some of our European neighbours and in some of our home nations, and these systems have brought cost savings to many where they have been lauded. Urban and semi-rural settings appear to be the most suitable. There are many examples of utilising available biomass, forestry waste, wood chippings and other waste products which have clear environmental benefits. However, the report found little evidence of this alleviating fuel poverty in rural settings. Biogas and biomass. As I have already indicated, these fuel forms can be utilised in district heating schemes, and indeed within one of our pilots, which will be discussed next, this has brought benefits to a very peripheral, remote area in Finland. An abundance of suitable source materials can make this a very effective solution. Hydrogen. There is some evidence that hydrogen may become an option for decarbonising homes in the next 20 years. There is ongoing research into the possible use of existing gas networks to work with hydrogen transportation, remembering that hydrogen emits only water when burned in the home. It appears that this is a mid to long-term plan, and so far there is little evidence available that it will be a solution to energy poverty. It should be noted that the costs and benefits are not agreed upon, so this debate is one that will run for a while. In conclusion, on these low-carbon technologies and taking account of those consulted in the research, it seems that technology alone will not alleviate energy poverty generally, including rural energy poverty. So we need to look at a more integrated approach to the problem. The approach that we are recommending needs to be an amalgamation of three separate but related areas. Remedial measures for existing properties to make them more fuel efficient. Low carbon technologies and energy-related advice and support. Currently, the policy objectives of the government are ensuring that energy in all its forms is an affordable commodity for families and businesses, ensuring that we have energy security, and ensuring that we meet our obligations in relation to mitigating climate change. The report looks at three highlighted case studies, each exemplifying different aspects of approaches designed to address the issue of fuel poverty. The first is from France, interestingly volunteer-led and most notably providing ongoing support to those who need it, support that can last for up to 2 years. The second example is from Hungary, where local solutions to local issues exhibit the capacity for bottom-up approaches working well. However, doing this at scale remains a challenge. It should be said that there are many small-scale examples across all of our regions of these types of projects, some of them community-led, but again, scale remains an issue. Finally, the National Retrofit Programme Community Energy Grant. This programme is supported by the Government of Ireland and run by the SEAI, from whom we'll hear later. It is an example of excellent practice and has a healthy budget for its implementation. However, there are some aspects of the programme that could be amended to make it more attractive for fuel-poor houses, and it does not have a specific focus on rural households and no remit to address the specific issues of rural fuel poverty. So what are our key findings? differences in how energy poverty is defined, the specific problems of rural dwellings and how these exacerbate energy poverty, especially in the context of health. There is a need to have a holistic response to the issues raised for those in energy poverty. And we are still left with 3 key barriers to entry into low carbon technologies: funding challenges, raising awareness of how the move might help, and also related to this is a lack of trust in successful implementation. This last barrier has been mostly addressed in the approach adopted by the National Retrofit Programme. The solution needs to take account of a range of aspects when looking at the issue of energy poverty. It needs to be affordable, it needs to be accessible, it needs to be holistic, it needs to take account of rurality, and it needs to be applicable to multiple technologies. It needs to engage subnational partners, and it needs to be long-term. These aspects should combine to make a successful response to this ongoing issue. In conclusion, we are recommending that the NPA and EU actors must coordinate and integrate bespoke energy poverty and low carbon technology policies which meet these criteria as closely as possible. This will ideally address provision for 100% low carbon technology solutions which are funded for installation and retrofit costs for rural energy poor households. It needs to be simple, and beneficiaries need to be supported throughout the process, including access to impartial advice and support. A non-prescriptive mechanism will work best, which allows for the individuality of situations. And a key message needs to be the inclusion of a range of technologies. We need a provision of a strategy for engaging with subnational and community partners, including community energy, a key tool in targeting the most vulnerable and most rural. And lastly, we need to maximise the long-term stability and certainty to ensure confidence for all those engaged in this sector. This is especially important in light of previous experience of some supported schemes. I will leave you with the words of the Irish poet Seamus Heaney. May hope and history rhyme for those at most risk in terms of fuel poverty and health inequality. Links to all the work in this package, which I have given you a very brief summary of, can be found at that website. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Una. That was a very powerful run through of the analysis that you've done looking at health and housing. And that just nicely brings us on to the next part of the session. We're looking at the demonstration pilots. First of all, we will speak to Vilja from Karelia University to look at biogas, and then I'll be back to myself to look at the electrification of heating in rural Fermanagh. Just for the record, this is not Fermanagh behind me. This is actually a backdrop from Iceland, which Austurbrù kindly brought for us this morning. So thank you, and over to you, Vilja from Karelia University.
Thank you, Robert, and just a minute, I will start my presentation here. So, my name is Ville Kuitunen, and I will talk about compressed biogas applications to remote areas. And first of all, I would like to say a few words about the Karelia University of Applied Sciences, where I work as a project manager. Karelia is located in Joensuu, which is a small city in the eastern part of Finland, and Joensuu has about 76,000 inhabitants, and nearly a third of them are students. Our university is quite small, with 3,800 students and about 300 staff members. We are quite active in the RDI activities, especially in the international and local EU-funded projects and programs. At the moment, we have nearly 60 people working in 81 projects, with the volume of 8 million euros. With our strategic choices, we have committed to work towards a more sustainable future. And today's topics are closely related to sustainable well-being in a sparsely populated area and intelligent production and services, and specifically to carbon neutral solutions. So, how are we going to craft a better tomorrow together? One of the ways could be this solution that I present now. In this project, we have been studying one option how the vehicle-grade biogas market could be started in remote areas. Joensuu is located in the eastern Finland, that is also known as North Karelia. In the map, you can see all the biogas refueling stations currently available in Finland. Most of them are located in the southern parts, where we have also our natural gas grid, but the eastern and northern parts of Finland are still missing these refueling stations. Our own region has some biogas production. One biogas plant is in the municipal sewage treatment plant, and one is treating our region's biowastes. All produced gas from these two plants is currently being used in heating or in combined heat and power production. And these plants have not yet seen viable to start producing vehicle-grade biogas. So at the moment, it is quite difficult for us to use biogas in our vehicles, as the nearest refueling station is more than 90-minute drive away. And we have been working to solve this problem for a long time and came up with one possible solution that we then piloted in the HANDIHEAT project. And I think it's good to have a short look on what biogas actually is before going to our pilot in detail. Biogas is a mixture of gases, mainly composing of methane and carbon dioxide. Biogas production is in most cases tied closely to waste management, providing the best option to produce energy from biowaste without losing valuable nutrients. Biogas is an excellent fuel for a variety of different applications. For example, with it you can produce renewable electricity and heat. Biogas can also be upgraded to biomethane, which is then exactly similar to natural gas. And biomethane can be used in all traditional gas applications like cooking, heating, and in transport fuel. And good properties of biogas is also that it is one of the few transport or vehicle fuels that can actually have negative effects on greenhouse gas emissions. The reason why biogas and biomethane can create this negative carbon footprint is the reason that they reduce emissions by replacing fossil fuels, by avoiding methane slips from manure, by storing carbon in soils, and by producing green fertilizers. Biogas is produced by closing biowastes and other suitable materials in airtight container and just letting a mixture of microorganisms consume those materials. And as a byproduct of these processes, biogas is produced. In many cases, biogas is produced in these types of stirred sludge reactors, but there are numerous different options available. So CBG means compressed biogas that can also be referred as biomethane. And there are numerous different methods to upgrade biogas to biomethane. Some methods use membranes and pressure differences and other solvents or just water to strip the CO2 from biogas. And this results with nearly pure, like 94 or 97% methane gas. As biogas coming from the reactors is a gas that is not compressed, its energy density is rather low and long-term storage would require a lot of space. So in most small-scale production facilities, it must be utilized locally. We can say also that with biogas, the storage and transport options are limited. If biogas is upgraded to biomethane, it is easier to transport and store it in pressure containers. The downside is that the production of biomethane is rather expensive, and also the storage vessels are expensive. Many biogas producers in the remote areas struggle with this first step. To have biomethane production to be economically viable, you need a mature market for the biomethane. So why would you want to produce compressed biogas? First, you will get the best value for your gas in biomethane when used in natural gas vehicles. Even if the remote areas struggle with the market startup, it is proven technology and it is being used all around the world at the moment. In most cases, the vehicles are using natural gas from natural gas grids, and in some cases, you also have a green option to select biomethane. And as I mentioned earlier, in Finland, we have natural gas grid only in the southern parts of the country and not in the periphery. The problem with the biomethane market is that in order to economically justify expensive upgrading investment, the company needs to have customers buying all your biomethane production. So we can say that we have a classic chicken-egg situation where we need biomethane for vehicles and vice versa. So finally to our pilot, where we demonstrated the possibility of other uses for biomethane. In this specific case, it was a situation where a company would want to start the biomethane production, but there are not enough gas vehicles to consume the production volume. With heating unit that is working parallel with the existing heating unit, you would have the option to use the excess biomethane that is not sold to vehicles. It would provide a client that could consume all the biogas available or biomethane available, and if not, they would use the other existing heat sources, like in this pilot case, it would be light oil. This demonstration or pilot was not meant to give us an economically viable model, but to test this concept. The reason for this is that our pilot, for a number of practical reasons, was done in a small scale. If done in larger scale, the situation might be totally different. The main pilot was done in true periphery, as it was located near the Russian border in a village called Wärtsilä with only a few hundred inhabitants. There we used biomethane to produce heat for a municipality-owned group of small terraced houses and also a small country hotel. Normally, the heat for these buildings is produced by light oil boiler, and our mobile biomethane heating unit was installed during 2020. The produced heat from biomethane unit is transferred to existing central heating grid by heating the returning water. And I will not go to any technical details as they will be covered in the next more technically oriented conference. So, as said previously, the scale of the pilot was smaller than originally planned. And one of the reasons for this was that the new regulations and legislations limiting the size of the mobile gas storage. And as our pilot was not meant to be a permanent solution, the storage and heating units needed to be easily installed and removed. So the larger scale units would have been too expensive to operate in the project. On the left-hand side, you can see our gas storage unit that can be transported with a trailer. And in the middle is the heating unit that is connected to central heating grid with this black pipe here, if you can see my cursor here. And on the right is the gas boiler. Piloting mobile equipment is not always easy as the conditions change so much from summer to winter. In the winter, we might come to fetch the trailer for refueling and find the tires frozen to the ground, and then we just had to chip away the ice before starting the trip. And in summer, it was so hot that the refueling of the containers required actually cooling the tanks and repeating the refueling several times. And as I mentioned earlier, the nearest refueling station to the pilot site was more than 90-minute drive away. And as this container lasted about 4 days, there was a lot of driving when test was running at its maximum. And the driving conditions were not always ideal. Even though all the equipment used in the pilot were nearly market ready and CE approved, the conditions still managed to create some problems. We had, for example, a minor leak in our gas trailer that was found out during refueling. And one day we found out that the outside temperature was so low that it had actually managed to freeze some of the pipes in the heating unit. And this is where you will find the value of good SME partners. We just called the Metener Limited, which is the provider for our equipment. And in most cases, we were able to sort the problem immediately or within a day. And now I can say that our pilot was successful. We were able to prove that the concept is viable. Heating is a flexible option to use excess biomethane when not sold to vehicles or when you don't have enough vehicles to consume your production. And this option could help start the biomethane market in rural areas. In general, we can say that biomethane is flexible fuel for the rural areas, and it can boost the sustainability of remote communities. From these pilots, we gained a lot of valuable information that will help all the interested SMEs and communities in the future as soon as we can publish the results. And once again, I can't stress enough that we learned the value of good SME partners. And now to end my presentation, I will show you a small teaser video of the pilot. But from me, thank you for listening and please enjoy the video.
The Northern Periphery, an Arctic region. Known for its remoteness and cold winters, there is a high demand for heating. To keep the houses warm, oil is still currently being used in some sites as a heating fuel. With the HANDIHEAT pilot, we transform the old oil systems to utilize renewables. With few adjustments to the existing boiler, biomethane can be used as a fuel. As a renewable, waste-based natural energy source, biomethane will lower the carbon dioxide emissions significantly. The HandiHeat pilot system consists of storage and heating units. Storage units provide a safe method to transfer biomethane, but also they have an option for biomethane vehicle fueling. From the storage units, the biomethane is transferred to the modified boiler or to the heating unit, where it is burned to produce heat. With this system, you can keep your home warm sustainably. Are you curious about what HandiHeat can do for you? Visit our website. HandiHeat.
We'll now look at the second pilot in this HandiHeat project. As we can see from the deliverables and outputs, the work packages of pilot is a key part of this project, with the aim of the project to protect rural communities from price fluctuation and to improve social well-being and quality of life throughout participating regions. First of all, I want to look at the characteristics of housing in Northern Ireland. In the domestic heating, 68% of the population uses oil for their heating source. Presently, the policy is to displace this with natural gas where it is available. We can also see Northern Ireland's got the highest household energy expenditure anywhere in the UK based on recent government data. Also, if we look at the energy efficiency in Northern Ireland housing, like the rest of the British Isles, it's fairly temperate compared to Northern Europe, where they've got better energy efficiency because of more extreme climates. So there's a job to do with regard to our energy efficiency. Now I want to look at the carbon reduction in the UK and Northern Ireland in particular. Since the 1990s baseline, the UK has reduced its carbon footprint by 41% per year. Northern Ireland's corresponding figure is approximately 20%. So in the last 30 years, we have reduced our carbon by 20%, and we've got another 30 years to reduce it by a further 80%. Therefore, a step change is going to be required in the energy efficiency levels to hit net zero. Looking at the off-gas grid options, we see here a slide from the Committee of Climate Change, who is the strategic advisor for the UK government for the Climate Change Act. Here we see for existing buildings off the gas grid, they recommend electrification of heat with energy efficiency measures working together. And that has been the strategy which we have adopted in this pilot project in Fermanagh. Typical housing executive houses in rural Northern Ireland. As we see here, they're modern construction, built in the 1980s. They've got a SAP range between band D and band E, which is below average. They've got an air tightness of 10, which in context of new build, the air tightness is below 5. They're typically oil boilered, double glazing and good cavity wall with various levels of insulation. In the HandiHeat second pilot, we derived to look at 6 pilots in the rural areas off the gas grid, with energy efficiency retrofit and low carbon heating, social housing in County Fermanagh, and then to look at data monitoring over 1 to 2 years, with the householder being the focus. As I said before, make the technology work for the householder, not the householder work for the technology. Here we've got 3 models, and we're looking at the project outputs of capital costs, household bills, improved thermal comfort and carbon emissions. Now we'll look at the design SAP assessment for the houses as they were existing. The existing SAP range is between a SAP band D and a SAP band E, and the requirement is to improve the thermal envelope with non-intrusive measures and keep it under £10,000 per house. We want to try to achieve a SAP band C or as close to it as we can. The interventions we're looking at is cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, passive house fitted double glazing windows and frames, and non-intrusive air tightness measures, all to try and give a designed outcome. And the design SAP rating we've got for this is a SAP range of 65 to 69, which is a high band D. The thermal improvement measures that we've put in, we've got cavity wall insulation where we extracted the existing insulation where it was, and we put in new bonded bead insulation. We've got loft insulation up to 400 millimetres. We replaced the windows with passive standard windows to a U value of 1.0. We fitted it with air tape and with insulation on the reveals and then plastered over. And then where there was obvious air tightness failures, we put in extra insulation as you see here above the door. Looking at the low carbon heating options, first of all we're looking at the hybrid oil with air source heat pump. This is where we give primacy to the air source heat pump and use the oil boiler whenever the ambient temperature is under 3 degrees. We want to utilise an existing oil boiler and we don't need to do a deep retrofit. We're trying to get in around the SAP band C, but we do need a control. So the control measure is that in the middle. It's called an EvoLink. This system has come from Grant Boilers. This is now a picture of the hybrid oil boiler and the air source heat pump as fitted into one of the two houses in Fermanagh. As we can see the oil boiler in the grey box, and we can see the air source heat pump with the fan, and then the EvoLink sitting over the air source heat pump. The radiators in the house had to be increased the size by 50%, and we used a Climate energy device to assess the ambient temperature from outside the house. The second option we looked at was electric battery and solar PV with electric heating. This came from our associate partner, the electric storage company. We fitted 11 kilowatt Sonnen battery, 2.5 kilowatt solar photovoltaic array, and then electric heating. Here, the householder was a prosumer, and which was able to move electricity back into the grid. This is a measurable saving. The aim is to reduce the carbon and the energy bills by 40%. The third option in the pilot is to look at an oil electric immersion hybrid. This has got low capital cost and integrated to an existing boiler. Effectively a heavy duty immersion. We fitted at the heat exchanger with the premise that we will take the curtailed wind from the generators, put it through the system operators, distribution network and suppliers and feed into the houses. We haven't got all the parties together to deliver this, so we're just going to use model data. We only fitted this last month and we'll measure it over the following winter. And measuring the data, we've got Grant data loggers and Sonnen data loggers. We've got data from the electric and the heat loggers, and Climate provides the ambient temperature and the energy use. All the data that's been assessed by Ulster University will be open source at the end of this project. The initial findings and feedback after 1 year of testing from the hybrid oil air source heat pump, the tenants' bills have increased by £13 to £16 per week between November and March 21, which can be offset by savings in oil, so it is a cost-neutral system. The tenants' main feedback is that the heat feels different, doing your bit for the planet. On the electric generation and storage and heating, we only got the system fitted fully in March 2021, but the initial findings note the electrics cost about £10 per week for the heating and lighting in April. Over the summer months, the solar PV and electric storage indicates improved savings, and typically by early afternoon each day this model has fully charged the battery and it has commenced to exporting to the grid, therefore reducing carbon on the grid. Feedback from tenants, the house feels warmer after the battery and PV are fitted, but they're confident and happy to use the system because it's not costing them that much to use. The air tightness has been a great success. We've reduced the air tightness from 10 down to just over 5, and that's with £7,000 of energy efficiency measures. And also the carbon reductions on these two models have been reduced from 40 to 55%. Some of the findings also, we got an academic from Ulster University to go and interview the householders. So we looked at them pre-installations and post-installations. As you can see, some of the feedback pre-installation was very much fixed on the fuel poverty and the cost of it. You can't get credit for things like oil, so you have to owe money to people. I depended on that for a long time because I hadn't got the money to build up and I couldn't go out and get oil. Again, this is all regarding buying oil through oil drums. And then after installation, they're very much happy because they've got improved thermal comfort. The house, it holds the heat better, and I can isolate each individual radiator and each individual room when I need it. I know the air is good in the house and there's no damp or black pores to affect us, so that you have a sleep better knowing you're in a safe, warm home. Good feedback from the householders. Now I want you to show you at Ulster University, they've assessed the first model of hybrid oil and air source heat pump after the first winter from November through to March. And effectively, the two houses, as we see here, the cost of the electric and the cost of oil is the same, so it's a cost-neutral system. So the extra cost of oil can be offset by the extra cost of electric can be offset by savings in oil. Here's house one, they're spending approximately £16 extra per week and saving that in oil. And there's house two, they're spending approximately £13 extra per week and saving that in oil. Ulster University is presently looking at the data from the energy generation and storage, and after we get through next winter, we'll be able to get a clear picture from that there from Ulster University. In summary of these pilots, the hybrid oil air source heat pump costs an extra £13 to £16 per week, which offset by oil savings. Although this is cost neutral, there's an extra weekly expenditure, which is an issue for poor and working poor families. So what do we need? We need agile tariffs to come into the pricing structure as we have in GB, which will provide even greater savings for householders. The electric generation storage provides savings and grid flexibility. which has commercial value and prosumers for the householders. Oil and immersion hybrids need data in the incoming year, but it's a cheap option. Hybrid and electric generation and storage significantly reduce the household carbon emissions from between 40 to 55% compared with oil boilers. The air tests are coming in just over 5 for £7,000 of energy efficiency measures, and the monitoring has been the challenge. We have learnt lessons for our future pilots. But the key thing for this whole project has been collaboration. Working with our associate partners of Ulster University and the electric storage company was invaluable. Also the funding from NPA and our contractors and Climate and NE networks all work together to get collaboration to get better savings for the householder. Thank you. So that there's session 1 finished for this morning, and what we've looked at what works well across our partner regions. We looked at health inequalities and housing, and we've seen pilots in Fermanagh and Finland. We actually are now a wee bit ahead of time, so we can now sort of break for a comfort break, and we'll join us here back at 11 o'clock. Please keep the questions coming, and we'll look forward to after 11 o'clock we'll have session 2. Thank you. Good morning. If you just joined us, this is the HANDIHEAT final conference, session 2. Can I now introduce Siobhan McCauley, the House Executive Director of Regional Services. Siobhan.
Hi everyone. I hope you've had your comfort break there and had a nice cup of tea and coffee. I'm delighted to hear the morning has gone so well, and we're going to move on now to the afternoon session. The next speaker we have is the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Department for Communities, who is Mark O'Donnell. Mark O'Donnell is very much an advocate for energy efficiency, and we're delighted to have him today to say a few words. So over to you, Mark.
Well, thanks very much, Siobhan. And could I just say on behalf of my Minister, Deirdre Hargey, who unfortunately has other business this morning, just how pleased I am to, on her behalf, open the second session of this HANDIHEAT conference. I know from recent discussion with Deirdre that she recognises the huge importance of energy efficiency, energy transition and climate change issues. And really, for those of us that have been close to this area over the years, I suppose we probably do all share a sense that concerted action on climate change is at the centre of public debate here for the first time. And that's probably long overdue. But what's less new, but still very welcome, is the degree of cross-department and cross-sector collaboration that's now taking place. Our Assembly here in Northern Ireland has shown that it's determined to legislate so that action on climate change is elevated above day-to-day political considerations, and that it becomes central to decision-making, including in the setting of budgets. And I'm actually very hopeful that we're about to see some very big strides forward in the shape of the Executive's new Green Growth Strategy and its new Energy Strategy. I'm confident that each of these crucial policy statements will include a focus on fuel poverty and consider how our society's transition to a zero carbon economy can be achieved in a just and fair way. Of course, that issue has an immediacy about it as we look at a long winter dealing with enormous rises in energy costs. Our homes here are responsible for about 16% of all carbon emissions. Our challenge in the department and with our partners is to meet housing need while also working towards a target reduction of greenhouse gases. And that is going to be a mountain to climb. If my minister was here, she'd be saying that there must be a just and a fair transition to carbon neutrality by 2050. In effect, addressing inequalities and ensuring that households in fuel poverty are not left behind. DFC's key contribution to this will be part of our housing supply strategy, scheduled for launch by the end of March 2022. And alongside that is the need for a new fuel poverty strategy. Our housing supply strategy will set out how the whole system must deliver good quality, affordable and sustainable housing, particularly to meet the needs of the most vulnerable in our society. For the moment, our affordable warrant scheme, delivered by the department in partnership with the Housing Executive and our local councils, that's our mainstreamed domestic energy efficiency programme. It's targeted towards low-income owner-occupiers and households in the private rented sector, and it offers a range of energy efficiency measures. The next incarnation of that scheme will surely have to move away from its reliance on fossil fuels. And of course, the department recognises that much of what needs to be achieved in terms of energy efficiency, both in new build and retrofit, will be underpinned by building standards. And that's why we're working with the Department of Finance here, who lead on this work, just to develop those going forward. My department has also carried out a review of the role and regulation of the private rented sector and the standard of properties, including plans to introduce a minimum energy efficiency standard. Enabling legislation has been drafted. It's making its way through the Assembly at the moment, and subject to a successful passage, a private tenancies bill will become a Private Tenancies Act by the end of this mandate. And that'll give the department the power to bring forward regulations concerning energy efficiency levels required before a property can be let in a private tenancy. I talked about the budget a moment ago. Obviously, the budgetary impacts of extensive retrofitting of energy efficiency and zero carbon heating measures will be profound. I understand the Housing Executive recently commissioned a carbon savings report that estimated that bringing all housing stock here in Northern Ireland to SAP Band B, for example, would be £9.2 billion. But that money needs to be identified. And for me, that's why the Assembly and the Executive's determination to legislate is so welcome. But the picture is rapidly developing, and the focus that the HANDIHEAT project has on energy networks for rural communities, which are so reliant on fossil fuels for energy at the moment, is very much welcomed. And on behalf of my minister, I'd like to congratulate all the partners for everything that they've achieved. This €2 million transnational EU-funded project provides an excellent collaboration and learning platform for all of the many partners. It's really important that we make the most of this learning, because we need to understand what a retrofitting process might look like. I've no doubt the work of the HANDIHEAT project and other pilots indeed will continue to inform our work going forward. But Siobhan, I'd better wind up and introduce the next session. So maybe just recap. Session 1 focused on the initial stages of the project and the research and demonstration pilots in both Finland and Fermanagh. The ARC Healthy Living Centre research provided sound evidence on the approaches and barriers to tackling fuel poverty, energy poverty across the NPA regions. These demonstration pilots, with a vital focus on householders, will support assessing future options for change through the transition that lies ahead. So my department, the Department for Communities, recognises that for a truly sustainable future, societal change will be required. The promotion of education and delivering behavioural change must empower households to understand new technology and adapt for net zero. Session 2 then will focus on how the project outputs will be delivered. It'll highlight communication work streams and the HANDIHEAT online toolkit to educate, advise and signpost rural communities across the 9 EU partner regions. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak today. I really do look forward to hearing more about this important project. But for now, I'll put you back in the capable hands of Siobhan to take us all through the next session. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Really, really interesting presentation. And I will pass back then now to Robert. You're going to take the next panel. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you, Siobhan, and thank you, Mark, very much. We're now to session 2 now. Now we'll hear from Pure Energy and Shetland for Work Package T3, which have delivered the toolkit and to advise and signpost to rural communities for the energy transition across our partner regions. We'll speak to Erica from Luki Natural Resource Institute of Finland, who has made the biogas toolkit and how they can provide analysis of the biogas calculator and how this technology can be used. Finally, we'll speak to Clár Irish Centre of Housing, who has delivered the communication work package and the great work they've carried out in the Clár rural areas, some of it in partnership with the HANDIHEAT associate partner, the electric storage company. We'll also hear from Stephen Farrell from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland and the good work they're doing to highlight the one-stop shop to improve energy efficiency in the Republic of Ireland. But first, can I hand you over to the Pure Energy team in Shetland, who will present the toolkit on the rural communities.
Thank you, Robert. I'll just start the presentation. Hopefully you'll be able to see the presentation. So I'm going to speak a bit about the Pure Energy Centre's involvement in HandiHeat. My name's Ross Casey, and my colleague Elizabeth Johnson is also in the audience too. Talk a bit about ourselves, Pure Energy Centre, then look at our involvement in the deliverables of the digital resources that was mentioned earlier, and then there'll be a small video to take a closer look at those online resources that have been developed and will go live over the next few days. So ourselves are a multidisciplinary team with quite an extensive technology experience in clean energy technologies, from concept development through to integration, operation, maintenance, and so on. And we've provided quite a lot of input over the course of the HandiHeat project. Probably most well known for involvement in the hydrogen technology sector, which was touched on earlier, and have been quite active in that field for quite some time. More applicable to this project would be the renewable generation aspects of the technology. And this graphic sort of summarizes the total supply chain, if you like, from renewable generation and electricity networks right through to storage and end use technologies. So the digital resources overview, which was deliverable T3 in the HandiHeat project. We've developed a set of online resources and information for interested people that sets out to be informative and simple and easy to access and understand. Is from a trusted source and has been developed in partnership with all the project partners and feedback during the course of the project. We've designed the online resources to be as accessible as possible, providing recognizable logos and information for all the partners involved, and an adaptive wide layout so that it can be seen on a variety of devices. Some of the key features to the website is a resource information repository, if you like, with information sheets detailing different technologies. There are downloadable resources, including some calculators and tools, and there's analytical information to help the project partners going forward understand and improve that resource as time goes by. And we've developed dedicated pages for each of the technology types that have been discussed today. So that includes solar technology, small wind power technology, heat pumps, both air and ground sourced, and biomass and biogas technologies to provide an easy to understand overview of each of the technologies and how they might be applicable to homeowners. The information sheets, as well as being available printed format, they're available as a downloadable Acrobat, very easy two-page information leaflet for each of the technology types. And the analytics around the website, these figures are just examples, but going forward, it'll allow partners to understand the interest and from which locations that interest is coming for that sort of homeowner level information for the different renewable technologies. Information about all the partners is also linked on the website resource. So along the bottom of every page, you'll find logos and active links to each of the project partners to find out more information about each organization. And quite importantly, the digital resources are available in an adaptive online format. So whether it's a mobile phone or a tablet or a laptop or conventional computer, the resources will adapt and optimize their display to suit the device that's being viewed on. So there's a number of screenshots here, just giving you a very brief overview of the sorts of stuff that's on there. But what I'm going to skip to now, hopefully, will be a video that one of my colleagues has put together that takes us through that online resource.
Hi there, here is a quick overview of the HandiHeat website and what we have built so far. So the landing page, this is the very first page that people will land on. You can see at the top here we have what we call a sticky menu, which basically means no matter where people are or how far down the page they scroll, this menu consistently stays at the top and the logos are very visible to anybody who lands on the website. There is two main parts to the website, the contact page, and then there is each individual technology with their own individual pages. The home page acts as a quick route to finding the information that people want. So if people click learn more, they will automatically get taken down to the section that clearly displays each individual technology and the link to access more information and resources. As well as this homepage section, there is also the option, of course, to come up to the menu and select the technology from here. So if we just select solar PV, we'll then get taken onto the dedicated solar PV website, page, and we'll scroll down. Now, each individual page has the same layout, just to keep things consistent and clear for any users landing on the website. We've got an image at the top, we've got the HandiHeat logo here as well. We then move into information about the technology and a visual diagram on how it works in simple form, just to give people who might prefer a visual diagram a little bit more information. We then have an image, if applicable, and then we move into some stats around the technology with the appropriate references you can see here. So each stat has their own reference. We also have the option to skip to the very bottom of the page to view the references straight away if they'd like to. So if we click here, we'll get taken down to the references, and each of them have their own individual links. If we just go back up to the top here, following on from the stats, there is always another section for information about the resource before we then go into the calculators. So we've got access additional resources below, and we can see here we've got for solar, the Great British Pound calculator, the Euro calculator, and we also have the option to download the PDF leaflet on every single page and every single technology. So if you click download PDF leaflet, the solar leaflet will appear. People can print this, save this, or they can simply move back and continue to browse the website. So each individual technology has the same layout, and then there is also the contact page, a very simple contact page, which gives people two options. We have the link here. People can just click this. Their emails will automatically open, whether on phone or laptop, and they can send yourselves an email, or they can complete the form, which will then go to this email address. With regards to partner logos are located at the bottom of every single page, which people also have the option to scroll through at their own speed or move back and forth as they please. And at the very bottom of every single page is the footer. We've got the disclaimer, we've got the HandiHeat logo again, and we also have another access route to the individual technologies should people want to explore more or simply contact HandiHeat themselves. I hope this helps. If you have any other questions, please just let me know, and we will speak to you soon.
So that was explained very well by one of my colleagues there, the framework for the online digital resource and how it all works. Now we'll go back to the presentation. So in summary, we've been involved in the development of a number of digital resources to inform visitors to the online repository of information for the HandiHeat project. These include digital leaflets, some modeling calculators and tools to help people, I suppose, play with numbers a bit and understand what the technology could do for them. It's developed a number of other website resources and there's some signposting to other projects and resources that might be applicable. We've also worked in providing input to other partner work packages and have also looked at energy supply company models and have developed a report on ESCOs, which will eventually be available on the website with the other digital resources. And we're in the process now of migrating this onto the main HandiHeat website in the coming days to link with all the other materials and information that's been developed as part of the project. So thank you very much for your time. That's just a very quick overview of what we've delivered within the framework of the HandiHeat project. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Ross, for that there. And as Ross says, we will have that available shortly on our HandiHeat website. Can I now turn to Luke Resource Institute of Finland to discuss the biogas toolkit and ask Erica. So Erica, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So can you now see my screen? Good. So I'm sorry, I'm not able to share the camera since I do not have a camera in this computer where I'm joining. But anyways, greetings from Finland. My name is Erika Winkvist. I work as a research manager at Natural Resources Institute, Finland. Ville Kuittinen was telling you about Karelia's pilot in the morning session, how to use biogas in heating. So in my turn, I will tell you about the biogas tool developed in HandiHeat project, and the aim of the biogas tool is to increase biogas production. So I will start my presentation shortly telling you about what is biogas. Then why we are interested in biogas in the HandiHeat project, and then I will tell you about the biogas tool and some future outlooks. First, what is biogas? Ville was already explaining this very nicely, but just to remind you, biogas is a gas mixture containing approximately 60% of methane and 40% of carbon dioxide and traces of other gases. And when we compare it to natural gas on the other hand is almost pure methane. Biogas can be also upgraded to biomethane. And biogas is formed when organic biomass is degraded in anaerobic conditions. And suitable raw materials for biogas production are municipal sewage sludge, separately collected biowaste, side streams from food industry, and agricultural residues, such as manure, grass, straw, and crop residues. Biogas can be used in heat production, combined heat and power production, as traffic fuel when upgraded to biomethane, and also in replacing natural gas in industry. Why biogas? There are several reasons for that. First of all, we need to treat organic waste in some way. The two options are composting or anaerobic digestion. And the good benefit with anaerobic digestion is that we can use the energy content in the biomass. Then at the same time, we have pressure for more environmentally friendly agriculture, and it's possible to reduce emissions with biogas. Also, we have pressure for more resource efficient and cost efficient agriculture. So combining food and energy production could bring the farmers new incomes. And the scope in the HANDIHEAT project has been decentralized heat production. Therefore, we have concentrated in farm-scale biogas plants to help the farmers to choose a good, suitable plant. And the aim has been replacing fossil fuels with biogas, especially in heat production. And Ville had a very nice presentation about that. So this biogas tool, it has been developed in HANDIHEAT project in cooperation with Turku University of Applied Sciences, Ukipolis, Metener and Demeka, which are two Finnish companies. Biogas tool, the link can be found in Luke's website, but also in HANDIHEAT's website. We have done the tool in 3 languages: English, Finnish and Swedish. The biogas tool was developed to support especially farm scale, so small scale biogas production with maximum amount of 15 tons per year of raw materials. The aim was to increase knowledge in biogas processing, lower the threshold for farmers to build an own biogas plant, improve energy and nutrient self-sufficiency on the farms, decrease emissions from agriculture and replace fossil fuels. We hope that the main users would then be farmers, but also energy companies interested in cooperation with farmers, energy advisors in agriculture, consultants and students. Our tool provides 3 technologies. We have wet digestion, high dry matter digestion, and dry digestion technologies. The idea was to provide suitable technologies for all kinds of raw materials. And I will now introduce these 3 technologies one by one. Let's start with wet digestion. This is the most traditional way to produce biogas, and it's suitable for all kinds of slurries. This photo is taken from our institute's own biogas plant, and behind you can see a cow house. We are treating cow slurry in this reactor, and there is also an additional post-digestion tank. So this wet digestion is suitable for a feedstock mixture with a dry matter content below 12%. And it's a continuously stirred tank reactor where the temperature is roughly 35 degrees. Reactor tank is built from concrete and it's partly underground. Then the next option is solid digestion. Also, this solid digestion is a slurry type process, but it can handle a higher dry matter content than the traditional wet digestion. The reason for that is that the raw materials are homogenized as a pre-treatment before feeding the reactor. It's also possible to circulate the liquid fraction from the digestate back to the feed. And this plant here in the picture is designed by Demeka, a Finnish company. And the last option in the tool is a dry digestion. This differs from the two other technologies in that way that this is a batch process with a solid feed material. And solid means that it's moist, but there is no excess water in the feed material. And there is no stirring during the process. And here in the picture, you can see the reactor silo. So these are the three technology options. But then how to use the tool? The idea is that the only thing that the farmer needs to know is how much biomass is on the farm suitable for the biogas production. There might be cow slurry, excess grass from feeding. Maybe they get additional feed outside the farm, like separately collected municipal bio-waste. And when the farmer knows what kind of raw materials there are available for the biogas production, he then fills in the tool the amounts, the yearly amounts. And then after that, the tool suggests the most suitable technology option, and the farmer can then also change the operational parameters, which, however, are suggested by the tool. So the tool guides the farmer step by step through the whole tool. And if the farmer knows more specifically some values than are originally given by the tool, he can change them, but he doesn't need to. And in the end, then, as output, we get answers such as how much biogas is produced, what is the biogas plant energy consumption, what is the fertilizer value of the digestate, what is the income from energy production, how much does the biogas plant costs, what are the operating costs, and finally, what's the profitability of the plant. And we hope that this biogas tool will enhance the farm-scale biogas production. But it seems that there are many megatrends supporting biogas production currently. We have both EU level and national renewable energy and greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. There is also pressure to combine food and energy production for better resource efficiency and profitability in agriculture. Also, the biogas production helps to recycle nutrients in agriculture. And we also see more and more so-called green consumers who wish to choose sustainably produced agricultural products, such as carbon neutral milk or greenhouse products produced with biogas. So this was the end of my presentation, and here you can see the Lucas team behind the tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. And what that presentation has showed us is that we should always use the natural resources which is in the country which we have, as opposed to shipping it from all around the world. Very good presentation and very much food for thought for ourselves across the island of Ireland. Now, I finally want to introduce you to Alma from Clár Irish Centre of Housing, who has prepared a video for us on their role in County Mayo.
Good afternoon and welcome to Mayfield Lake Development here in Clamara's, County Mayo on the west coast of Ireland. My name is Alma Gallagher and I manage Clár ICH, and we are one of the HANDIHEAT partners participating in this Northern Periphery and Arctic programme. Our role is we are coordinators of the communication work package, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to showcase many of the projects that we have completed under the auspices of the Better Energy Communities funded by the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. We are the only voluntary housing association in Ireland delivering retrofitting programmes on behalf of SAI, and the principles of increasing renewable energy solutions and making social housing schemes more energy efficient and addressing fuel poverty in rural areas is our core principles and marry very nicely with the principles of the HANDIHEAT project. We have identified some social housing schemes and some fuel-poor householders to interview today for our presentation for the final conference, Energy Transition in Rural Areas.
Hi there, my name is Sean O'Neill and we're here in Clontuskert today in County Roscommon. Clontuskert has a really interesting history in that it is a former Boardnamona village, the only one of its kind developed in 1952 in County Roscommon. The population of Clontuskert is in around 200 people, so we're at the heart of a rural area here in Clontuskert. We were really lucky to be able to take part in the Better Energy Community Scheme through the SCI grant this year to be able to have our home retrofitted. So just some of the measures that we got done on our home here included solar panel fitting, external insulation, new windows and doors, and all the other insulation work in the attic. So as domestic homeowners, we were really lucky to partake in the Better Energy Community Scheme to get grant aid this year as a family to retrofit our home, to bring our 1952 Boardnamona's workers home into the era of sustainability.
Here in Turin we have 7 houses. They are for the elderly. Recently we decided to upgrade the houses to make the houses more energy efficient, reduce the carbon footprint. So we approached Clamara's ICH to help us to get this done. So what we did was all new doors, front and back. We changed the heating system to an air to water, and we also pumped the walls, and we did attic insulation as well. So this will make the houses a lot more energy efficient, make it more easier for the elderly people to heat and help them to save money. In order to get this done, we received a grant from the SAI, and we also made a contribution ourselves. So, without this, it wouldn't have been possible to get this done.
Good afternoon, my name is Barry and I'd like to welcome you here to the lawn, the social housing scheme here in the heart of Clamara's. We in Clár are very happy to show off the estate here to the HANDIHEAT partners. The estate was built in 1999. We decided to do an energy upgrade in 2013, which meant connecting to the gas grid. This made it an awful lot simpler for the homeowners to operate the heating system, and they actually found, as was noted by the manager here, Sean, that there was very little need for the solid fuel fire after the gas boilers were installed. So it cut down the need for fossil fuels and solid fuel quite significantly, almost to zero. The upgrade that was carried out here was carried out with the assistance of SEAI under a Better Energy Community Scheme. It paid for a substantial portion of the job, and the rest was actually funded by Clár themselves. They managed to increase the BER on these houses from a D2 to a B2, so that was quite a significant increase in the energy efficiency.
So my name is Mel Gavin. I work in IT Sligo in the Contract Research Unit. We work with communities, businesses and individuals, largely in the fields of sustainability and sustainable technologies. We've worked with Clár ICH for a number of years now, largely because Clár are a retrofit service provider. So one of the difficulties in the region is trying to get somebody to carry out the works when we have homeowners and building owners interested in energy upgrades. So Clár have attended a number of events here where we've brought interested parties together. Clár have presented themselves as a service provider. We've also worked with Clár on advising Sligo County Council on the Cranmore Regeneration Project. And in general, we've worked with Clár across the Sustainable Energy Communities Network in Tourmakeedy, in Clontuskert in County Roscommon, and a number of other locations. We're standing outside two houses that have been recently renovated and upgraded by Clár ICH. And this is a part of the Cranmore Regeneration, which is one of the aspects of energy use in Cranmore was that there's been traditionally or historically quite a reliance on solid fuel heating, and a lot of that is coal heating. We know that's the case where there are households that have lower disposable incomes. It's easier to buy a bag of coal than it is to try and fill the oil tank. So that's something we would find in a lot of areas around Ireland. But of course that has impacts, as we know, on climate, but also probably more relevantly for the people who live here, on their health. So any improvements we can do to reduce that will improve obviously the health of the inhabitants, hopefully make them more comfortable, also reduce their energy bills and improve the area. So of the works carried out here, there would have been quite a lot of wall insulation upgrades, new doors and windows, and heat pumps, which are very efficient heating technology, which can work in a well-insulated house. So it's a change for the residents. It's a change that will hopefully make them more comfortable. It is a new technology, it's something you'd have to get used to, but it is definitely improvement all around.
Hi, my name is Pat Lavin and my company is EcoSmart, and we install PV and heating systems in conjunction with Clár ICH. In this case, we worked with a sun and battery, which was supplied to us by the electric storage company. We went to UUJ to look at some systems that were already in place with the electric storage company. We sent our existing electricians up to Belfast to get trained on the installation of the sun and battery system. They then installed 5 batteries locally for us on existing houses with a mixture of fuel poor and non-fuel poor. It's very important to us that we keep a local supply chain. Therefore, it's important that we upskill our existing contractors. The idea of the battery is to capture all of the electricity that's created by the existing PV systems to ensure that it's all used. All the homeowners have found a very good and a very responsive return from their investment.
The electric storage company, the name kind of gives it away. It's all about finding ways to reduce costs, increase renewables usage, but do that in a way using big data, and that is what electric storage is all about, giving people lower costs, cheaper but greener electricity. So we've been working with Northern Ireland Housing Executive from we started this company, because they're a key player. They determine social housing policy here in Northern Ireland. And they came to us and asked us to get involved with HandiHeat, and we were delighted to get involved. What it allowed us to do is to bring our technology into play and to compare and contrast with other technologies, and most importantly have real customers, real families using the technology and understanding what that means for homes, what that means for budgets, what that means for usability in the home. One of the things we do is we set up smart batteries in people's homes, and we can set them up as clusters, grouping them together, and we were very keen to have the opportunity to set up a cluster down in Claremorris, because that would give us an understanding of that Republic of Ireland market, which was important for us, but also we were very keen on the societal approach of Clár ICH, the idea that it's of the community, because at its heart the electric storage company wants to bring cheaper, greener energy into communities, and a rural community is a perfect setting for that. So yes, it seems a long time ago now, we travelled down to Claremorris, but we were made very welcome, and installing the kit using Pat's people who we trained up has worked very, very well indeed. The advantage for the fuel poor home is that electricity, when it's provided by renewables, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that is A, wasteful, and B, it misses a really good opportunity for fuel poor homes. If you can store electricity, we can actually buy electricity cheap on the market, store it in those homes, and then people in the fuel poor home have cheaper electricity because it's smarter, and it's green electricity because it's coming from solar panels or wind turbines or anaerobic digesters further down the line.
On behalf of Clár ICH, we'd like to thank all who contributed to this video today for our final HandiHeat conference. I hope you've gained an insight into how Clár ICH increases energy efficiency and renewable energy solutions for rural areas here in the west of Ireland. Thank you.
And thank you, Alma, from the team at Clár ICH for seeing what they've done at Claremorris and the difference they're making. And also thank you to your associate partner, the electric storage company, for helping and assisting in Claremorris. But I have to say, being from Tyrone, the gardens are much brighter and better looking in Mayo. And that's all I'll say on that one. And next, can we hand over to Stephen Farrell from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. Stephen has worked on numerous retrofit schemes for the SEAI, including the Better Energy Communities and including managing the National Home Retrofit One-Stop Shop development call, for which Clár ICH continues to participate on a yearly basis, accessing support for energy retrofit communities and buildings. Stephen is going to briefly go through the one-stop shop concept currently being developed and integrate into retrofit delivery mode to help reach out to our domestic national retrofit target for 2030 and beyond. And this is very relevant to Northern Ireland and is definitely best practice, and it's great to see you. Stephen, you're very welcome.
Robert, thanks a million, and thanks folks for the invitation to HandiHeat via yourselves and Clár ICH. Just by means of introduction, to repeat there, I'm working currently in SEI, and I'm managing the National Home Retrofit Scheme, the One-Stop Shop development call. And that's been in operation since September 2020. And we've seen an excellent video there from Clár ICH and the positive work they're doing throughout the domestic and non-domestic side, and they've been involved in the National Home Retrofit. Also, and they've been doing good work on the BC side. But no, I was on this slide here, so I was just going through the three different channels, and we're trying to simplify it for the audience clicking into our website who are interested in following through with an energy upgrade. So this is what the homeowner will see, and focusing in on the one-stop shop service, it aims to remove the barriers, as much barriers as possible, experienced by a homeowner if they're willing to proceed with an energy upgrade. A lot of homeowners can be overcome by the whole concept of spending 30, 40K on a house to bring it up to a B2. They don't know where to start. So our approach is that we offer a service to the homeowners where a one-stop shop comes in, and it takes on the whole responsibility of upgrading the house. So the one-stop shop will, I suppose, discuss the homeowner in terms of their finances. They'll do an energy assessment to see what's required to bring the home up to a B2. That'll generate a list of works and a cost. And then if the homeowner is willing to proceed, the one-stop shop will project manage, they'll coordinate the works, and they'll make sure the works are done to the correct standards and the technical requirements. They'll engage the contractors, and they'll know the sequence of works that will happen, and they'll make the application to SEI as well. And they'll also provide a post-works BER. So in essence, it's taking the model we're designing, the process that we're implementing, we'll be implementing in Q1 next year, is to take that level of stress and uncertainty away from the homeowner, put it into the hands of an experienced retrofitter, namely a one-stop shop, to deliver a B2 home to the homeowner, and just to remove that those level of barriers that might be in place if a homeowner is intimidated in leading and coordinating that work themselves. Just two more slides here. Just on the one-stop shop and the way it is now, we currently have the development call in place. And the aim of this is to create learnings and to I suppose, to make improvements and amend the national retrofit delivery model for 2020 and beyond. So currently we have kind of a package in place where a contractor has to work, or a one-stop shop has to work within a fixed contract period between April and October. There's clarity on grant amounts, but these can deviate. That creates a level of financial uncertainty for the homeowner who's availing of the grants as well. And what we're trying to do is move to a place at the start of 2022 where multi-annual contracts there on the right-hand side, multi-annual contracts are in place, so the work flows continuously. So there's no stop-start process in contracts. The whole process is simplified and streamlined. So in terms of documentation and invoicing and so on, there's a simple declaration of works. The process is automated. So basically, if an application is made to support a household, that the grant offer and contract is offered instantaneously. That our new model is customer centric, so there's a simplified homeowner journey, and the responsibility is passed to the one-stop shop, taking that burden off the homeowner. Increased clarity in our grant offers, so the homeowner knows they're going to get X amount for these 4 measures, as opposed to the current level of up to a percentage of 35% support. And then the added flexibility for the homeowner in terms of when they can do the work. Currently, we kind of were focused on getting it done within the budgetary year. The new program will allow the homeowner start because there's ultimate multi-annual contracts. So we're in a process of engaging stakeholders now. We've a draft scheme developed, but it's not finalized or signed off on yet. But we're in the process of engaging with the stakeholders to get feedback to help inform how the final look will be presented and fit. And then just the small bar chart at the bottom of the slide there. So continuity of work is key to growing the supply chain. And the way we have it is the one-stop shop development call there is at the bottom. Normally, the timeline would stop at that red bar there in the bar chart. We've continued it to March 2022 just to keep that continuity of work. And we aim for the new one-stop shop national retrofit delivery model that will be efficient to deliver these tens of thousands per year, will be in place around January, February next year. So there's an overlap, and that overlap will feed into somewhat developing the supply chain and the way we want it to fit. We know there's a lot of work to do there. I think we're at a place where there may be 6,000 plumbers working in the Republic of Ireland, and 500 of them or 600 of them are only registered to install heat pumps. So there's a vast majority of our plumbing sector who are focusing on oil and gas boilers still. So there's a huge task there to developing the supply chain. And we hope, along with the Department of Enterprise and their work in terms of formulating a plan, and it should be published by the end of 2021 on how we're going to incentivize this going forward. There's a lot of work with government agencies such as SkillNet and Solus trying to improve supports and make supports more well known across the industry there to help the one-stop shops, the likes of Clár, to develop their skills and their workforce. And I suppose ultimately what we're trying to do, it's a 9-10 year plan now, and we want to start building the confidence in the market. We wanted people to get organized. There's I suppose a guarantee there now for the next 10 years from the government that this level of budget will be assigned to retrofit all these houses. So we want the one-stop shops to get organized, to grow their companies, take on direct staff, upskill their workforce, so they have ability to build capacity and scale their output year on year. And I suppose later on in the decade, say between 2024 and 2030, we'll be kind of looking at unlocking new initiatives and innovations to kind of help standardize the design and the process. So the whole process can take off. The 500,000 will be a challenging target. But I suppose it's key that we put the steps and processes in place early to help us achieve where we need to be. So that's the end of my presentation. Apologies for the mix-up at the start, Robert. But hopefully that you found the information informative and useful.
Okay, Is that me on live yet? Thank you, Stephen.
No problem. I'll unshare.
Stephen, thank you very. Yeah.
No problem.
Stephen, thank you very much. You've given us a lot of lessons there to learn in Northern Ireland and a lot of best practice, which we can definitely learn from going forward. And now we're just now going to move on to the looking forward and how the project has made a difference. Now we'll look forward and looking at the project multiplier for the project. Rural Leading the Energy Transition, Roulette, is a combined project between the HANDIHEAT and Ulster University, which we intend to get onto site later on this year. The project aim is to reduce or eliminate the risk of low-income householders being left behind in the transition to a smart integrated energy system. Like HANDIHEAT's pilot in Fermanagh, we're going to look at 10 dwellings this time. Pre-works are again between SAP Band D and Band E. We'll look at social housing in the Omagh area. The energy efficiency retrofit is again going to cost around £7,000. The post-works, we are trying to get them up to a SAP Band C. We're looking at 3 models this time: the hybrid oil boiler with an air source heat pump, the hybrid gas boiler with an air source heat pump, an air source heat pump working with a thermal battery. But the key difference in this project compared to the HANDIHEAT pilots, we're trialling agile tariffs and time-of-use tariffs thanks to the utility regulator and Energia, who's providing us for the first time in Northern Ireland. We're also wanting to investigate the use of curtailed wind and renewable energy, how we can benefit householders. And like the HANDIHEAT pilots, make the technology work for tenant, not the tenant work for technology. On the issue of wind curtailment is where we're not using all the energy that we're producing from offshore and onshore wind. Typically 15% of that is being curtailed, and that's an opportunity that we can put into people's housing and in social housing in particular. And that's what we're trying to investigate in the Roulette project. A second project which is working well, the associate partner of the electric storage company got money from Innovate UK and has put a 60-unit trial in Coleraine, some of the houses belonging to the HANDIHEAT and Choice Housing as well. Girona aims to give people fuel choice and energy flexibility as a service. The Girona project concept was conceived before HANDIHEAT, but the HANDIHEAT pilot complements a much larger scale project, as I said, 60 units in Coleraine. Project Girona has recently been awarded a winning tender by the NIHE Networks Flex within Logestown, Coleraine, and will allow them to monitor data for 21, 22 and potentially up to 2024. With Innovate UK support, this project estimates a saving of around 40% on your electricity and your carbon savings and provide grid flexibility. As a UK and a Northern Ireland first, and again, as I said before, the HANDIHEAT, Choice Housing and Community Housing has all benefited from this here and reduced their energy bills. Now I want to look at the policy interventions that we have looked at in the HANDIHEAT project. The aim is for future policy and, more importantly, translate policy into practice, leading to warmer homes and healthier communities. Hoping now to influence and build relationships with policymakers, as Jenna Irvin said, bring the learning from the grassroots to the grass tops. We've looked here at some of the policy interventions and some of the toolkits. We're trying to influence Northern Ireland's energy policy. We're trying to influence NE Networks' strategy for networks to net zero. Looking forward, the HANDIHEAT has recently been successful as lead partner for the HEATER project, which is going to work on the deliverables of HANDIHEAT and spread them across the 9 NPA partner regions in collaboration with the Greener project from Donegal. And everybody who has been on this call today will get an invite to the opening on the 5th of October. I now want to call forward Dr. Patrick Keelty, Lecturer in Energy Policy and Infrastructure for Ulster University, who's one of our associate partners.
Hello, I'm Dr. Patrick Keelty. I'm a lecturer in Energy Policy and Infrastructure at Ulster University. And we've been supporting the HANDIHEAT project with our researchers and PhD students doing analysis of the performance of the heating technologies in the project. I've been happy to support HANDIHEAT. It's an important contribution to development of low carbon affordable heating in Northern Ireland. It's also helped us to develop our next research project with the housing executive, which is the rural-led energy transition Roulette, which goes to the next stage beyond HANDIHEAT to look at the market products and tariffs that are required to support the deployment of low-carbon heating systems in social housing in Northern Ireland. And this will help us to address our problem with our management of wind at the minute. We currently waste a lot of wind that's generated on the Northern Island system, and these projects will help us to better manage and use our indigenous clean energy.
And thank you, Patrick, for that there, one of our associate partners from Ulster University. Details of today's presentations will be on the HANDIHEAT website, and all our reports and toolkits will be made available shortly. Can I just, before we close the conference, do some thank yous? I'd like to thank your 7 partners across our 5 NPA regions. I'd like to thank Jenny Irvine and Terry Waugh, who started this project 5 years ago. We'd like to thank the regional controllers and the first level controllers, especially SAUPB for us in Northern Ireland, who have kept the House out of right in our first opportunity as a lead partner in this EU project. Within the House out of team, I'd like to thank the comms, Gary and Barbara, thank you very much. The HANDIHEAT team itself, project manager Catherine, project accountant Stephen, and the project assistant Amy. Amy has single-handedly event managed today. And just on that, I'd also like to thank AVC Studios, who has bared with us, endured us for this last couple of days. Thank you very much. You have been invaluable. Finally, and most importantly, we'd like to say a special thank you to our funder, the Northern Periphery and Arctic Programme. Our desk officer, Christopher Parker, who has expertise and support, has guided us this last 3 years. But finally, can I thank Kirsty? Kirsty is the head of the Secretariat for the Northern Periphery and Arctic, and I'm now going to invite her to give the closing address. Kirsty, thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to give the final address at this project conference as a representative, as you said, from the EU funding program, Northern Periphery and Arctic, or NPA in short. As you may be aware, the NPA area is vast and covers 9 countries, stretching from eastern Finland all the way to western Greenland. And the area spans much of the European Arctic as well as Atlantic regions. What all these communities have in common is a low population density, among the lowest in Europe, long distances, harsh climate, pristine nature, and an abundance of natural resources. Empowering remote and sparsely populated communities to have access to sustainable renewable energy solutions for housing and public infrastructures is one of the main objectives of the NPA program. Transnational cooperation can facilitate an exchange of knowledge and technologies that can be important for making such renewable energy sources a viable option for these communities. Other NPA projects addressing the energy priority that preceded HANDIHEAT have focused on small-scale renewable energy generation, energy efficiency, smart energy management, and heating methods adapted for harsh climate and remote communities. Through collaborations across the program area, these projects have achieved such benefits as reduced energy consumption by retrofitting buildings, energy efficiency measures, and sharing good energy practices. Reduced environmental impact by optimizing district heating and using residual heat from a local wastewater treatment plant. Improved access to services through a mentoring service providing expert knowledge on sustainable energy communities and a virtual learning environment. Raised awareness and policy influence through a dedicated program targeting policymakers with renewable energy guidance. The achievements of the HANDIHEAT project that we heard about earlier this morning fit very well on this list, with deliverables that aim to provide practical and well-tested renewable energy solutions and roadmaps for rural communities affected by fuel poverty. And it's not just a program saying this. An impact evaluation of the NPA program from 2018 found that NPA projects have increased the awareness about the feasibility and cost effectiveness of renewable energy solutions. In addition, NPA projects increased the local capacity to act on opportunities for energy savings and renewable energy generation and help deliver tangible results. A territorial analysis of the NPA area from 2020 highlighted that community-based energy generation can also have social and political benefits such as strengthening local engagement and building social capital. This is why projects like HandiHeat and other NPA projects focused on small-scale renewable energy solutions can make a real difference in remote communities. I'm also very pleased that the lessons learned from HandiHeat will have a legacy through the clustering project HEATER that we just heard about, which was approved in June of this year. This collaboration of 5 NPA projects will build on their experiences and outputs to educate and empower local communities to affect positive behavioral change and inform decision makers to influence policy across climate change mitigation and adaptation and sustaining communities. Let me finish by congratulating HandiHeat on their impressive project achievements and this successful conference. Thank you very much. That concludes my presentation.